Welcome back. At the top of the ticket in 2024 for Midwestern Democrats, he was all pretty grim. However, there were down-ballot Senate victories in Wisconsin and Michigan. So how does the party think about its prospects in the Midwest going forward? Well, to do so, it's going to have to consider those prospects without Minnesota Senator Tina Smith and Michigan Senator Gary Peters. Why? Because neither is seeking re-election. Caitlin Huey-Burns sat down with both to get a sense of their future and the Democratic Party's future.
So you both are in your 60s and you are retiring. I mean, that is a young age for senators. It's kind of rare to retire at your age. Why now?
When I leave in 2 years, I'll be 68 years old. And everybody says, you are so young. I go, I love the Senate for that.
I would say only in the United States Senate can you be a 67-year-old grandma and they're calling you like the fresh new thing.
So why not stay then?
I didn't come here saying, I'm going to be here the rest of my life. And I believe in what our founders thought, that you would go to Congress, you're a citizen, you go to Congress, you serve, and then you go back to wherever you came from and live the rest of your life.
What is it about the institution, you think, that incentivizes people to stay for so long?
Well, the Senate is a very seniority-driven institution, and power comes from how long you've been there. It's always been this way. This is not a new thing. The longer you're there, the more likely you are to run a committee, the more likely you are to become a leader. And so that is a big reason why people stick around. And I think actually one of the things that we need to do is think about how to reform the Senate so that also there isn't so much power in the hands of just a few people.
If you're chair of the committee or a ranking member, you can be there as long as you'd like. Probably having a little more turnover there makes sense as an institutional reform.
Are you worried that by leaving your seat, it could flip to Republicans?
So between a deep bench and what I believe will be a good Democratic year, I'm confident we will elect a Democratic senator from Michigan this election.
Do you feel the same about Minnesota?
I also believe that having some competition is actually good. It's interesting. I think it engages voters when they have a chance to, understand like who their next leader might be, and they feel that their voice is going to be really important in choosing that leader. So I don't think we should be afraid of the competition.
How important do you think it is to have new blood as part of the party?
I think that our party is in the midst of a big generational a transition, and I think that that's good for the party. And incredibly strong leaders that have been in these positions of leadership for decades in some senses. And I think that as there are new voices stepping in, that is going to be reinvigorating for us.
Having that new energy come in is incredibly healthy for our democracy.
I mean, there's age, but there's also issues, right? I mean, Bernie Sanders is up there, as we know, but he is speaking to issues that younger folks in the base resonate with.
Well, I think that voters see a lot in our system that is broken, that isn't working. And when they hear leaders say, oh, we need to return to the past, or we need to just protect where we are, they're not looking for that. They're looking for somebody who's ready to challenge the status quo and not just sort of defend it.
You've announced your retirements at a time that the Democratic base seems to be a little bit upset with Democratic lawmakers. They feel, and we've seen this in town halls, they feel like you guys are not pushing back hard enough against the Trump administration, that you're not doing enough, they want you to do more.
I think that a lot of Americans have been looking at what's happening in Washington, and their attitude is basically like the house is on fire. Like, this is a very bad situation. We're seeing challenges to our democracy. We're seeing a president who is basically not abiding by the laws of this land in a way that is really upsetting to them and scary to them. And Democrats, I think, need to hear that and respond to it and not just say, oh, don't worry, everything is going to be fine.
So you mentioned the Democratic Party being a big tent. Is there someone in the party right now who you think represents the party? Who would you kind of identify as the leader of the Democratic Party right now?
I think there are a lot of leaders of the Democratic Party. Just like we're a big tent, there are a lot of voices out there. There's a disadvantage when you don't have a presidential candidate. That's not unique to the time we're in right now. There's a bully pulpit that a president has that you'll never be able to equal. That just doesn't happen.
And you're both from the Midwest. Trump won your state. He didn't win yours, but Republicans have been more competitive. Is there an area where you think Democrats should be working with President Trump right now?
Certainly, I think we have to find ways that we can work with President Trump, and if particularly related to the economy, if there are things that are going to be helpful to folks in their daily lives, we can't just be all no. And I don't believe that all no. Then if you're always no on everything, then basically you're irrelevant.
How do you think right now on tariffs?
I represent a state that has big agricultural interests like Gary does. Also, we're the home of the Iron Range, which produces most of the raw iron that goes into American-made steel. So targeted tariffs that go after bad actors, go after unfair ways that other countries close down their markets for Minnesota pork, or that flood our country with highly subsidized steel is bad for American workers, it's bad for our economy.
And Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now. If you recognize that venue, ladies and gentlemen, from previous episodes of the long-forgotten, but maybe coming back, you never can be sure, Takeout, well, that's the Dubliner in Washington, D.C., so that's a great venue.
We've been inspired by you. You inspired us to go there ourselves.
So at one point, Tina Smith, the senator from Minnesota, says, yeah, some Democrats think the House is on fire, and yet they're leaving. And two other Senate Democrats are leaving, Jeanne Shaheen and Michael Bennet.
Yeah, Michael Bennet announcing today that he's going to run for governor in his home state of Colorado. And in that statement, he said that he believes he can do more outside of Washington than in this body, which tells you a lot right now. And I thought it was interesting that both of these senators, they're in their late 60s, which is very young by Senate standards, but they are trying to make a point here with their exits that you can have a whole other life beyond the Senate. You don't have to stay until you are, into your 90s. I mean, they watched their colleague, Dianne Feinstein, for example. They are both planning careers and lives outside of Congress after their term ends.
And maybe they feel this thing that Senator Smith referred to, the transition with the Democratic Party to a new, younger generation of leadership, and they don't want to be ousted by that push.
And they both said that it's good to have some of this younger blood, that they hope that their exits allow some more competition within the party, too, to kind of help rise up the ranks. But I thought it was so notable and so true. The reason that senators stay so long is because it takes so long to get seniority, and seniority equals power on these committees. Yep. How do you change that? The House has worked on it. The Senate needs to.
Our thanks to Caitlin Huey-Burns for the interview and the Dubliner for the venue.